shocking message from God, what he revealed to you at 3 a.m. will change everything forever. In the dead of night, a chilling whisper raced through the air, a message so potent, it sent tremors across the quiet town of Maplewood. It wasn't a dream. It was the kind of revelation that could warp the very fabric of reality. Imagine waking up at 3 a.m., your heart pounding, dread creeping up your spine, as you hear a voice so clear and commanding, "The signs are everywhere." Those words hung in the darkness like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous, begging to be deciphered. Tim Sullivan had never been one to entertain the supernatural. He was a simple guy with a 9-to-5 job, plodding through life like everyone else. But that night, something inexplicable twisted his fate. The shadows in his room felt alive, swirling with secrets. The walls, once a warm beige, seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of their own, and the clock ticked like an urgent drum, each second closer to something unspeakable. Footsteps echoed down the empty street outside, a rhythm of restless energy. Tim threw on a shirt, his fingers trembling as he buttoned it up. The moonlight spilled through his window, casting eerie patterns that danced across the floorboards. His mind raced. Had it really happened? That voice? He had to know. As he rushed outside, the air was thick with tension. The neighbors' lights flickered, illuminating the worried faces peering through curtains. Whispers swirled. Had anyone else heard it? Had anyone else experienced the divine intrusion? A shiver went through the small gathering of townsfolk, their expressions a mix of disbelief and dread. They sensed it too, a collective unease, a thread of fear connecting them all. "Did you hear that voice?" someone shouted from the back of the crowd, and silence fell like a thick fog. Everyone turned towards Tim, their fear transforming into anticipation. They looked at him, desperate for answers. The experience had wrapped them in its unsettling embrace. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Tim felt the weight of their stares. The whole town hung on the edge of a knife, waiting for him to say something, anything. It said the signs are everywhere, he managed, his voice cracking. Gasps erupted like popcorn in a microwave. The energy in the air crackled as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Everyone in Maplewood knew that the night had shifted. A deep pulse of fear mingled with flickers of hope. A change was coming, and it was going to shake them to their core. The forest at the town edge loomed like a dark guardian, holding secrets that begged to be unearthed. In that moment, Tim had one thought: what happens when we uncover the truth? And was he ready to face it? With eyes wide and hearts racing, they understood one thing: the night was far from over. The crowd's murmurs swelled, voices overlapping like a cacophony of uncertainty. Each person wrestled with their personal fears while clinging to the hope that something crucial was unfolding before them. Tim's heart raced, he sensed a gnawing urgency to unravel this mystery, despite his apprehension. Then, an older man stepped forward, his face pale and solemn. "I don't know what's happening, but I had a dream. It was so real." He paused, swallowing hard, his eyes darting nervously across the gathered faces. "I saw the forest. It spoke to me. It told me the signs are in the trees. They have been watching us." Tim's stomach dropped. It was one thing to feel the gravity of the voice he heard, but could the forest really hold more? The very place deemed sacred yet shunned by many, shrouded in superstitions, became a source of terror in that moment. The breeze rustled the leaves, almost responding to the man's words as if the trees themselves were whispering secrets back into the night. "What do you mean?" A woman cried out, hope spilling into her voice. "What did you see?" "Faces," he replied, eyes wide as if lost in the horror of his recollection. Faces within the bark. They were crying out, begging for us to listen. But if we ignore them, something terrible will happen. A chill ran through Tim. The truth loomed like a dark shadow over Maplewood, and the night slipped deeper into the abyss of confusion and fear. Despite his initial skepticism, desperation clawed at Tim's insides. Could the answers they all sought lie within the tangled depths of the woods? Maybe we should all go. Tim suggested, the words slipping out before he fully considered the potential horrors waiting in the shadows. Gasps splintered the air, and eyes widened in shock. But something within him stirred. He felt it, that same urgency that had gripped him since those words pierced his heart. The crowd shifted, revealing a mix of curiosity and outright terror. We have to act now, Tim continued, taking a deep breath, before it's too late. The forest beckoned with its dark allure, a place filled with both fear and a promise of revelation. The group nodded, a wave of collective determination surging. Let us find the truth, someone encouraged, their chant caught like a wildfire in the cool night as they made their way toward the trees. Whispers filled the atmosphere, rumors of a forgotten history, of lives lost in pursuit of the dark secrets that the forest guarded fiercely. Shadows flitted among the trunks, stretching tall like soldiers ready to defend the nature that held such power. Tim led the charge, heart hammering as he crossed the threshold into the darkness. The sounds of the town faded, leaving only the steady crunch of twigs beneath their feet. Then suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the air. The piercing sound sent shockwaves through the group, halting them in their tracks. Together, they turned toward the source, blood running cold. Did you hear that? A voice whispered, trembling. Tim felt the heat of panic rising in his chest. The forest had awakened, and so had its secrets. What awaited them within its dark embrace? With the moon now veiled by ominous clouds, uncertainty hung like a heavy fog. And as they stepped deeper into the woods, a singular thought erupted in Tim's mind: this was just the beginning. What other revelations lay shrouded in darkness, waiting to be uncovered? The scream echoed like a ghost through the trees, chilling Tim to his core. His feet felt rooted to the ground, but his heart raced like a wild stallion. The crowd behind him shifted uneasily, their faces pale and eyes wide, reflecting the terror of everyone around him. Go back! Someone shouted, but the words were lost against the thudding of Tim's pulse in his ears. He needed to move, and so he pressed on, driven by a mixture of dread and a desperate need for understanding. The trees towered overhead, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like ancient hands grasping for something just out of reach. In the distance, another cry broke through the stillness, more desperate and visceral this time. It was followed by rustling as if something or someone was scrambling through the underbrush. Tim squinted into the darkness, trying to catch a glimpse of what awaited them. Stay close! Tim barked, urging the others. His voice quivered, betraying his own fear. The crowd, brave in solidarity moments before, now seemed fragile under the weight of the unknown. As they moved deeper, the air thickened, laden with the scent of damp earth and decay. Shadows danced around them, creating an almost hypnotic effect as they ventured further into the heart of the forest. The whispers of the leaves grew louder, resembling a chorus, urging them to listen, to understand. Then, out of the gloom, a figure stumbled into view. It was a young man, wild-eyed and breathless, dragging himself from the underbrush. His shirt was torn, and his skin bore scratches, as if he had fought through the very talons of the forest itself. They're here! He wheezed, and with a trembling hand he pointed back into the dark. You shouldn't have come. The forest it won't let you go. Tim felt the color drain from his face as the man's warning plunged into his heart like a spear. The others hung back, awash with confusion. Why had they ventured into this cursed place? What truths awaited, and at what cost? As the man continued to babble incoherently, something rustled nearby, and a shifting mass of shadows huddled just out of view. Tim squinted hard, trying to discern what lay hidden there, and his chest tightened. Can you see them? The young man whispered, terror glimmering in his eyes. They're watching the faces in the bark. They see everything. Suddenly, the wind howled like a beast unleashed, making the branches groan and creak above. The breath caught in Tim's throat. He glanced at the trees surrounding him. They seemed to shimmer under the moonlight, no longer just silent witnesses. They felt alive, sentient. "Everyone, stay alert," Tim shouted, though doubt gnawed at him. What if they weren't alone? What if the truths they sought were twisted within that darkness, clawing to come free? Then, without warning, the shadows surged forward. Tim felt the air crackle with energy. A shimmer passed through the crowd, twisting their expressions from fear to something darker, curiosity that bordered on madness. They were drawn, like moths to a flame, pulled toward the secrets that bubbled just beneath the surface. The young man cried out again, pleading, "You don't understand. It's not just stories. It's real." Tim opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the shadows erupted from the trees. They coalesced into shapes, faces reflecting agony, anger, and despair, peering through the bark of the ancient trees, their eyes filled with a haunting depth. He wanted answers, but now they threatened to swallow him whole. Breaths quickened as dread settled like lead in his stomach. What had he awakened within the forest? And in that moment, as the faces reached out, Tim understood with grave clarity, they couldn't turn back now. No one could. What did the forest want from them? What truths would it demand? Tim's heart thundered as the faces pressed closer, forming a wall of anguish that felt alive. Each set of eyes bore witness to something primal, something dark within the roots of the ancient forest. There was no denying their presence. The whispers mingled with the rustle of leaves, creating a cacophony that seemed to vibrate through bone and marrow. "Run!" someone finally screamed as panic ignited the crowd. But Tim stood frozen, torn between survival and the desperate urge to know the truth. The darkness around them began to pulse, a living entity that fed off their fear. "Don't you see?" the young man cried, grabbing Tim's arm with a grip like iron. "They need us. They want us to understand their pain." His voice wavered, breaking under the weight of his own terror. "We have to listen." In that moment, the forest seemed to shift. The ground quaked beneath their feet, and the gnarled trees swayed as if caught in a storm, roots writhing like snakes in the soil. Tim could feel the earth's heartbeat merging with his, a morbid reminder that they were not just in a forest, but in the heart of something alive, something that felt betrayed. "Why? What do you want from us?" Tim shouted, his voice straining against the chaos. The faces in the shadows morphed, contorting with expressions of longing and rage. Their mouths opened soundlessly, and for a brief moment, he could have sworn he felt his own voice echoing back at him, the weight of their collective sorrow wrapping around him. The wind howled, carrying a hiss of words that chilled him to the marrow. "Awake, remember, forgive." What does that even mean? Tim asked, his heart racing. He glanced back at the others. Fear had gripped their faces, and uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Then, without warning, one of the shadows lunged forward, morphing into something solid, something terrifying. A figure draped in strips of bark stepped into the light, its eyes two hollow pits of darkness. It reached out, long fingers stretching toward the crowd. "Leave while you can," it screeched, a voice like grinding stone. "You tread on sacred ground. You awaken that which cannot be contained. Your past weighs heavy, and it demands a price." Tim staggered back, his mind racing. Past? What past? They had come seeking knowledge, a mere adventure through the woods. But this was no mere getaway, it was an awakening, a confrontation with their deepest fears. The crowd noticeably faltered, glancing at one another, fear turning into an unsettling curiosity. Were they ready to confront what lay buried in their own souls? "Don't listen to it," a woman screamed, clutching her friend's arm. "We have to get out of here." But something deeper than fear was at play now. "Wait!" Tim shouted, stepping forward again, compelled by a mix of dread and determination. What if uncovering these truths was exactly what they needed? The figure began to dissolve, the shadows flickering like candle flames. "Remember," it echoed faintly, drifting back into the gloom. The crowd stilled, tension thick in the air, each person caught between the urge to flee and the desire to confront the unknown. "Tim, please." His friend begged, eyes wide with panic. "You can't seriously be considering this." "I have to know," he said, a quiver in his voice. "What are we missing?" "The forest needs us to understand." Just then, a low rumble echoed from somewhere deep within the woods, a roar that turned the whispers to a hush. Trees swayed aggressively, and the very air gripped them, heavy with anticipation. Tim's lungs constricted, fear and intrigue clashing violently. What would they uncover? What truths of their own would the forest reveal? "Tim, don't." He turned toward the voice, heart racing. The shadows were shifting again, a presence coiling tight like a predator. Just as the first dawn of understanding dawned on him, a searing light pierced the darkness, filling his vision. A revelation loomed, but what would it cost them all? The ground shook violently, and the shadows roared in unison. What truths lay hidden just beyond that blinding light? And would the answers seem worth the price they might have to pay? The ground heaved like a living beast, sending tremors through Tim's legs as regret and resolve surged within him. The chill of the air prickled his skin as the deafening roar faded into an eerie silence, the kind that makes every heartbeat feel amplified, every breath a reminder of fragile existence. Then it hit him, a sudden, terrible understanding. The forest was not just alive, it was a witness. It held the weight of every secret, every crime, every unacknowledged truth of those who had walked this path before him. His pulse raced as he sought the faces of his friends, looking for some shared acknowledgement of the unnerving moment. "Is anyone else feeling this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The young man who had first grabbed his arm stepped forward, a wild spark in his eye. "Yes. The spirits they show us are past. We're connected to them." His enthusiasm clashed violently with the horror surrounding them, but the flicker of hope nestled in his words stirred something deep in Tim. Suddenly, the silence shattered. From deep within the shadows, a chorus of whispers rose, echoing the haunted tones of long-forgotten souls. "Remember, forgive," they called again, a chant laden with desperation. Tim felt their yearning, felt the pull of pain that welcomed him, beckoned him closer. "Don't listen to them," shouted the woman from before, now panicked. "They're playing tricks on us. It's not safe." But safety felt hollow. Tim's instinct to flee battled against an undeniable pull. Wouldn't confronting the darkness finally bring light? A vision of his own past glimmered at the edges of his mind, memories long buried beginning to stir. The loss, the regrets, the silence that followed heartbreak. Was this what the spirits wanted him to face? As if sensing his internal struggle, the air thickened with tension. Shadows twisted and writhed, angry yet mournful. One shadow detached from the rest, solidifying to reveal a face half-formed in the gloom. Its mouth opened wide, the sound that escaped could only be described as a lament, resonating with every heartache he had ever known. "Will you carry your burdens with us?" it asked, voice splintering in and out like a fading radio signal. "Or will you let them consume you?" Tim's breath hitched. What did it mean? Could he really face all of it? The anger he carried, the insecurities that festered, the losses he couldn't bear to relive? Questions spiraled around him as fear gripped tighter. "Tim." His friend clawed at his shirt, panic overtaking her voice. "We can't do this. We have to get out now while we have the chance." Maybe it's what we're meant to do," he replied, the words heavy on his tongue. He was surprised at how calm he felt despite the chaos unraveling around them. "Do you not hear them?" the young man pressed, eyes wild with fervor. "This is our opportunity. They want to purge the pain, to set us free. We can change everything." The more he listened, the more Tim's heart raced. The shadows encroached, swirling with purpose. Light pulsed in time with his heartbeat, brighter now, pushing against the darkness. Whatever was happening, it felt like a reckoning. "Join us." The shadows chanted, voices merging into a haunting harmony. Those faces were not just searching for understanding, they were seeking release, and perhaps, that connected them all, the living and the lost. At that moment, Tim had a choice, to embrace the pain or turn away. The air grew electric as the ground trembled again, a surge of energy amplified by his decision. What would he reveal about himself? What would it cost him to delve deeper into this abyss? Just then, a flash of blinding light erupted, swallowing the shadows whole. Tim's vision blurred, and he felt weightless, suspended between worlds. In that instant, he understood there was more to confront than he had ever dared to imagine. What ultimately emerged from that light? And would it be the salvation they sought or the doom they feared? The light swallowed him whole, wrapping Tim in a cocoon of brightness that numbed all thoughts. His body felt heavy yet weightless, suspended in a sea of swirling colors. He couldn't tell where his memories ended and this strange new vision began. Suddenly, he was standing in a familiar place, his childhood home. It looked just as it had when he was a boy, paint peeling on the walls, the smell of cookies baking drifted through the air. But this time, shadows lurked in every corner, obscured figures watching with hollow eyes. Tim's heart raced as he turned to see himself as a child, playing joyfully, blissfully unaware of the pain that would come. The laughter echoed softly, almost mockingly. He felt the pull of memory, every moment bursting forth like a dam breaking. Why did you have to leave? The question erupted from him as if someone else had spoken it. The boy stopped, turning to him with those innocent eyes, filled with unspoken fears. You'll never understand, the child whispered, fading into the backdrop of the room. Then, a figure stepped into the light, a woman, framed by nostalgia, with warmth in her gaze. It was his mother. Tim stumbled back, breath hitching. Mom. Before he could say another word, she raised a hand, palm forward, and the kitchen faded away. They stood now in a dark field, the moon low on the horizon, nearly eclipsed by clouds. You have burdens you must face, Tim, she intoned softly. You think you come here for answers, but you need to seek forgiveness first. What do you mean? He asked. Each word felt like a stone, heavy and cold. For what? Sometimes, the ones we hurt the most are ourselves, she replied, her voice a haunting song that lingered in the air. We hide in our pain, believing it will protect us, but it only serves to isolate us. Around him, the shadows began to swirl faster, their whispers shifting from pleading to angered chants. Remember. Forgive. Release. A cacophony of voices now echoed through the darkness, and Tim felt the grip of despair tighten around him. Suddenly, those whispers exploded in a torrential wave of memories, faces of friends lost, words said in anger, moments of weakness that had chipped away at his soul. Tim doubled over as if physically struck, the pain in his chest piercing deep. He was drowning in regret, tethered by chains of his own making. Tim. Fight back. His own voice rang out, coalescing with the memories, drowning in turmoil. You don't have to carry this anymore. The shadows pressed in, suffocating, their claws like ice against his skin. But in that moment of darkness, he felt a sudden warmth, a flicker of light deep within him. Face it. The command came from his inner voice, a fierce whisper of resilience. Embrace it. With a sudden surge of strength, Tim stood tall, facing the shadows head-on. Their anguished wails morphed into something different, a symphony of lost souls, all yearning for closure. He reached out to them, hesitating for just a heartbeat, then cried out, I'm sorry. I forgive you, I forgive myself. At that moment, the shadows recoiled, wailing in disbelief as the ground began to tremble beneath his feet. Tim felt a shift, a release as tendrils of darkness began to curl away from him, dissolving into the moonlit air. Crisp, clean light poured in, igniting the horizon. What lay ahead now felt both terrifying and exhilarating. As the remnants of anguish receded, a path unfolded before him. The ladies in the mist, once fearsome, appeared as guiding figures, hopeful yet solemn, but then a sudden crack of thunder echoed overhead. A dark storm loomed, fierce and angry, swirling clouds gathering swiftly. Tim's heart raced. What would emerge from this tempest? Would his bravery hold, or was this awakening simply the quiet before a greater storm? The horizon shifted ominously, revealing that their fight was far from over. The air crackled with electricity as Tim stared at the storm brewing above him. Dark clouds swirled like a restless ocean, and the ground trembled beneath him, a warning rumble that sent shivers down his spine. He felt it in his bones, something significant was about to unfold. "Mom!" Tim yelled into the wind, hoping she would somehow hear him. But her form had vanished with the fading twilight, leaving him alone in this vast field of shadows and secrets. With each passing moment, the storm intensified, its winds howling like a pack of wolves, fueling his growing fear. Then, out of the darkened clouds, a bolt of lightning ignited the sky. For a fraction of a second, everything was illuminated. Tim gasped, a vision playing out like a movie in those fleeting flashes, faces he'd long buried under layers of grief, laughter that mingled with tears of betrayal, reflections of moments he wished he could erase. Memories surged through him, excruciatingly vivid. Remember. The winds howled, drowning out all reason. Remember the choices that led you here. He clutched his head, desperate to block out the cacophony. I can't. Not now. I need to stay strong. But even as he declared this, doubt crept into his heart. Had he genuinely forgiven himself, or merely scratched the surface? With a roar, the storm unleashed its fury. Rain poured down in sheets, flooding the land around him. Tim stumbled, his footing slipping as the ground turned into a muddy mess. He felt small, lost in this tempest, a child once more, overwhelmed by forces he could not control. As he fought to steady himself, the dark figures began to emerge from the storm. Wisps of shadow, indistinct yet familiar, whispered his name. Tim, Tim, don't forget, stop. He screamed, the word bursting forth with more force than he knew he possessed. He spread his arms wide, daring the storm to approach. Stop the torment. I'm here. I choose to confront you, not run away. In response, the shadows coalesced, swirling and shifting until, suddenly, they formed a single, towering figure. It loomed over him, features obscured in the chaos. Yet, somehow, Tim recognized it, the unyielding weight of his past mistakes manifested before him. Face your truth, Tim, the figure intoned, its voice a low rumble, harsh yet tinged with a strange familiarity. You cannot move forward until you acknowledge the wreckage left behind. Tears streamed down Tim's face, each drop mingling with the rain. What do you want from me? He cried, feeling utterly exposed. How can I possibly bear this? The figure seemed to pulse with emotion. You speak of burdens, yet have forgotten your power to change the narrative. What weighs you down can also lift you. In that moment, clarity washed over him. The shadows weren't evil, they were echoes of choices unmade, of fears unspoken. He had avoided them, afraid they would drown him, but instead, they sought reconciliation. I forgive you, he breathed, focusing on the shadows, willing them to embrace change. I forgive you all. A shockwave rippled through the field, causing the dark figure to shudder. The storm flinched, the winds calming for a breath, but just as Tim sensed the shift, a voice emerged from the eye of the storm. But what of the shattered trust? What of those you've yet to face? The figure dissolved in a swirl of mist, the storm re-intensifying around him. As he stood on the threshold of clarity and chaos, something profound loomed ahead. A path was carving itself through the haze. This moment could lead him to reparation, or it could engulf him in darkness once more. Tim's heart pounded as he took a step forward, a question gripping him tightly. Would he dare confront those he'd wronged, or would he fall back into the shadows he had just begun to escape? The ground trembled beneath Tim's feet, the storm angry and relentless. He could hardly catch his breath as he stepped into the murky path ahead. Each step felt monumental, as though he was wading through emotions that had been buried for far too long. The rage of the storm echoed the turmoil within him, a fierce reminder that he was not alone in this battle. The wind shrieked, almost mocking him, but he pushed through it, latching onto the sliver of hope that illuminated his way. Then, he faced the churning clouds again, a swirling darkness interspersed with jagged flashes of lightning. "I've come too far to turn back," he whispered to himself, determination igniting within him like a flickering flame. Visible shapes morphed through the storm's center, and a chilling realization sank in. He was not just facing memories, he was on the brink of encountering those he had hurt. That eye in the eye of the tempest, he spotted a figure emerge, not cloaked in shadow now but cloaked in sorrow. Tim squinted, his heart racing as the identity dawned on him. "Rachel," he breathed, the name laced with bittersweet nostalgia. The girl from his past, the one whose laughter had once filled his life with joy, now stood shivering in the storm, her eyes reflecting the lightning's intensity. "Tim!" she called, the anguish in her voice cutting through the howling winds like a knife. Her face shimmered with unshed tears, and suddenly the storm turned to a dull roar. "Why, Tim? Why did you leave?" His chest tightened at her question, a weight he had carried in silence. "I was scared," he shouted against the wind, desperation clawing at his throat. "I didn't know how to face it, to face you." Rachel stepped closer, the storm swirling around her, and in that moment, Tim saw the truth in her eyes, piercing through his defenses. "You thought leaving would protect me? You thought I wouldn't feel the void you created?" With each word she spoke, the memories flooded back, a friendship built on trust slowly unraveling due to his cowardice. The laughter, the shared secrets, all overshadowed by a single moment he chose to turn away. "I thought running away would shield you from my pain." Lightning struck again, illuminating both of their faces. Her expression twisted with both anger and sadness. "You thought wrong, Tim. You destroyed us both. That wasn't my intention." The truth spilled out like a torrent, harsh and raw. "I never wanted to hurt you, I was just so lost." He stumbled, grasping for words as the winds picked up with a furious howl. Rachel's eyes softened momentarily, and the storm around them seemed to still, creating an eerie calm amid chaos. "Maybe we can reconcile this." Her voice trembled, and he glimpsed the flicker of hope buried beneath his mistakes. But the storm's power surged again, and in the distance, the shadows materialized, consuming the space behind her. "Time waits for no one, Tim." The familiar voice of the towering figure echoed again from the storm's heart. "You cannot undo the past without facing the consequence. Truth will bind you or destroy you." Tim's breath hitched in his throat. Could he stand tall against the storm of his own regrets? Would Rachel's forgiveness be a possible answer to the wreckage he had caused? Just then, the winds began howling again, ripping through the moment, threatening to pull him back into despair. As he reached out to Rachel, a battle raged inside him. The shadows loomed, whispering insidiously, "Turn back, Tim. Don't face what you cannot change." But among the chaos, he caught the glimmer of something he had long thought lost: bravery. The path before him stretched infinitely, and he realized the decision weighed on him alone. Would he take that step toward what lay ahead, or would he be consumed by the very darkness he sought to escape? In the vast grip of the storm, the choice teetered on the brink, and Tim stood frozen, caught between the familiar and the unknown. Would this storm be the last time he allowed fear to dictate his actions, or would it drive him deeper into despair? With every ounce of energy, he shouted against the wind once more, "It's time to face the truth." But just before he could take another step, new, ominous rumbles sounded in the storm. A force unknowable began to converge on him, the very air thickening with tension. And suddenly, he realized the storm was only just beginning. What awaited him in its fury was more monumental than he had ever imagined. The ground trembled beneath Tim's feet, more violent than before, as if the earth was echoing his internal struggle. Every flicker of lightning cast eerie shadows that danced around Rachel's fragile form, her face etched with pain and longing. The storm roared louder, drowning out the whispers of his heart, yet he felt her eyes drawing him in. They were a compass of lost times, beckoning him toward the reckoning he had shunned for too long. "Rachel," the words caught like shards in his throat, splintering with the intensity of the storm. Her presence stirred a tempest within him. "I want to make things right." But before he could find the courage to step forward, a booming voice from the storm interrupted, its authority palpable, resonating in the marrow of his bones. You want to reconcile? Then bear witness to your actions. The truth does not hide, it unleashes. A shadow separated itself from the maelstrom behind Rachel, morphing into a silhouette he thought he'd forgotten. It was Jake, his best friend, his brother in arms. But now he loomed large and vengeful, eyes blazing like molten fire. Tim! He bellowed, his tone sharp as a blade, cutting deep into the anguish that twisted Tim's heart. You ran away. You abandoned me. Did you think I would just forget? Jake! I didn't mean to. I was running away from my demons. I thought I could protect you by staying out of your life. Tim's voice cracked, desperation rising. Memories flooded him, late-night talks, shared laughter, the sense of invincibility they felt together. And then silence, but Jake's expression was unyielding, a mask of relentless fury. You protected no one, Tim. You shattered us. You left for your own cowardice. You destroyed everything, and now you must pay. The winds howled as if responding to Jake's anger, swirling and clashing like the emotions tearing at Tim's insides. Rachel, caught in between, looked from Tim to Jake, torn by both sides as she bit her lip, the tears spilling unchecked down her cheeks. Stop! She cried, her voice breaking through the cacophony. This fighting won't fix what was broken. We need to talk. Will talking bring back what was lost? Jake shot back. No, but it might help us understand how to move forward. Can't we try? Rachel's voice trembled as desperation washed over her. It mirrored the moment Tim once turned away, and it struck him like a punch to the gut. Tim took a shaky breath, memories of laughter and pain intertwining. I can't change the past, he choked out. But I wish I could for both of you. The fear of losing you both paralyzed me. Lightning flashed violently, illuminating the breadth of the maelstrom raging above. No more half measures, Tim. The thunder roared, shaking the ground as ominous clouds descended. The storm, like a ticking clock, demanded an answer. Suddenly, the shadows of the storm shifted, and Tim glimpsed something moving behind Jake, darker, menacing. It thrummed with a life of its own, and an undulating growl emerged from the depths, something ancient and primal. Tim, Rachel gasped, her eyes widening. What is that? I don't know, but I think it's our fears manifesting. As if summoned by his realization, the dark figure surged forward out of the storm, dragging the winds with it. A snaking shadow, its shape morphed as it approached, weaving in and out of the light. It carried the weight of every regret he had ever tried to escape. Face it, Tim! Jake shouted, his wrath momentarily transformed into fierce determination. You have to confront it. Or it will consume you. Tim's heart thundered in his chest, and he glanced at Rachel. Her unwavering gaze held his, igniting a spark of resolve. Through every ounce of fear creeping inside him, hope flickered brighter. Together? Can we turn this storm into something we understand? He urged, taking a tentative step forward, ready to confront this overwhelming darkness enveloping them. But as he moved, the shadow lunged its form, twisting violently as it unleashed an anguished scream that echoed through the storm, drowning out everything else. Tim! Rachel screamed, reaching for him. And in that moment, as he grasped her hand tightly, Tim knew, the fight for their forgiveness and his own salvation was not just a battle against the storm. This was a fight for life itself. What would they face as the embodiment of his darkest fears closed in? Would love and courage be enough to shatter the storm and his past, or would it draw them all under into an abyss of regret? Tim stood at the precipice of chaos, heart pounding beneath the weight of shadows that twisted through the darkness. Rachel's hand felt fragile in his grip, the storm's cries raging around them. Pain and regret flowed through him like a torrent, an exhaustive current he could no longer ignore. The shadow surged closer, and the very air vibrated with its overwhelming anguish. It coiled like a serpent, whispering his secrets, dredging up the past he feared most. Memories of failure loomed while Jake's accusing gaze burned like a branding iron on his chest. Tim felt sick, choking on his own inability to face the turmoil he had left unresolved, but even in this despair, something sparked within him, an ember of resilience igniting as he locked eyes with Jake and Rachel. They had been granted a moment, a fleeting opportunity to rewrite the story they once lived. The only way through this, Tim yelled, determination surging, is together. With that, he took a step forward, pulling Rachel close. We need to confront this monster, this fear together. No more hiding. No more running. He could sense Rachel's breath catch, and when she squeezed his hand tighter, it was like a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea. Together, they turned to face the shadow that dripped of grief and burden. Jake stepped up beside them, the fire of his painful memories dimming for an instant, flickering with an unspoken acknowledgement. We can't let it drown us, Jake said with fervor. His voice was fierce, filled with the years of frustration mingled with the desire for healing. This storm is a part of us, our pain, our choices. But it does not have to define us. As they stood united, the storm howled louder, but Tim took a steady breath and called out into the chaos, we remember. We forgive. We move forward. At that instant, a crack of lightning illuminated their surroundings as though affirming their statement, and the shadow hesitated, its form faltering as if recognizing something it had never experienced, unity. What do you desire from us? Tim shouted, summoning all the courage he had left. Are we not strong enough to face our own fears? The shadow shrieked, a sound twisting through Tim's bones. For the first time, he glimpsed something, a flicker of vulnerability. The shadows around him peeled back, revealing broken memories that lingered like ghosts, the faces etched in desperation and longing. Jake took a deep breath, stepping closer. You don't have to hurt us anymore. He roared. We've felt your pain, but we're done being afraid. Tim's resolve surged as he shouted, we will not be shackled by what you represent. We claim our past, but let it consume us. And as their words echoed into the storm, the tempest twisted. The shadows thrashed wildly, flickering in and out of coherence, caught between despair and light. Tim could feel the ebbing of darkness tension that had wrung their souls, hinting at release. Face your truth. The storm growled, its voice no longer a threat, but an anguished plea. It's time to forgive, Tim proclaimed. Not just each other but ourselves. In unison, they cried, we forgive. The shadow writhed, a shrill scream resonating through the wind, fracturing the storm's grip. Light began to pierce the darkness as they stood, arms linked, hearts united. The shadows that once threatened to engulf them surged away, shields dropping as raw emotion flooded in a cascading wave of relief. With every pulse of light, the whirlwind subdued, morphing into shapes of shimmering hope. The air thick with warmth wrapped around them, and acceptance blossomed like spring flowers breaking ground after a harsh winter. Tim felt the memory of guilt fade. Searing pain blossomed into understanding. As the storm receded, a soft glow enveloped them, illuminating the path toward healing. The air held the scent of damp earth warmed by the sun, promising rebirth. Tim looked at Rachel and Jake, their eyes filled with clarity, not anger, but a promise of tomorrow. In that tranquility, Tim felt the burden of despair lift completely. They had emerged from the storm, raw yet resolute. No longer victims to the tides of the past, but shaped by their choices and forged anew. They were free, finally free. The world felt lighter, each breath filled with promise. The trees sighed a soft melody, whispering secrets of renewal. Together, they stepped forward, the weight of the past cast behind them like a fading shadow. With heads held high, they faced the dawn, where the sun rose with warmth and the possibility of a new beginning. And in that moment, they all understood, true freedom lay not just in forgiveness but in embracing all parts of themselves, the light and the dark, the joy and the pain, every thread weaving into the beautiful tapestry of their lives. Now, let us keep this connection alive. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to join our amazing community. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and share this story with everyone you know. Flood the comments with your reactions, your theories. What do you think lies ahead for Tim, Rachel, and Jake? We can't wait to hear from you. And don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a spark of inspiration. Your support is what keeps us going.